Ready to hit the pause button on your parenting fails? Ready to feel better about your parenting? Welcome to Parenting Pause, the podcast, where all of you is welcome. I'm Leslie Potter, the founder of the Pure Joy Way, a mother, a parent coach, and a fellow traveler on this journey to wake up in our parenting. And I believe together we can make this a better world for ourselves and our kiddos. So earlier this week, we talked about parenting in the moment, and maybe you've had a little time to practice and see how that goes for you. And if you have resistance to this concept, or actually when you try to parent in the moment, if you have this resistance, it is really natural. I mean, resistance comes in our minds, right? And resistance comes, and my resistance came in the form of, well, if I do that, then this is going to happen. Or if I let her do that, then we'll never get whatever, right? So the resistance always came in my mind. And I started noticing all these stories every time that I had this new idea of dropping more of my concepts, dropping more of my ideas about parenting, and really beginning to step into the truth of that I didn't really know. I mean, this was really challenging to face into, but when I really began to get clear and clear that all I knew about parenting was from my mind. It was from my conditioning. Or it wasn't all I knew about parenting, but that's what I was going to for my information. And my information came from my upbringing, the template I had learned in my family. It came from all the books that I had read. So I had quite a file cabinet of information on how to parent. And I had a lot of resistance at the beginning to trusting my inner wisdom, to dropping into my heart and beginning to meet my child where she is or was at that moment, or meeting myself, which we talked about in the last podcast, about what it's like to meet yourself where you are in the present moment and to offer kindness to that moment instead of being in the future or in the past. And so I had a lot of resistance in my mind to actually dropping into my heart. And you may too, because every time I dropped into my heart, I had all these thoughts in my head that, oh, I'm just wimpy. Like I say, I'm letting her get away with stuff. I'm permissive. I mean, there's lots of judgment that began to happen when I would drop into my heart. But what I want to tell you about dropping into your heart, it's not dropping into your heart so much for your child at first. It's dropping into your heart with yourself. And this is where the safe seat practice is so incredibly powerful, because dropping into your heart and meeting yourself where you actually are with that incredible kindness opens a different door. And this is really hard for the mind to get, because the mind is so, it wants to be right. The mind does not want to be wrong. So it wants to be right. So it pulls in all this information of how it needs to be as a parent or what it needs to do. And it can't let your children do this. And it needs to discipline them. And it needs to set limits and boundaries. It just comes in with this liturgy. And I found it came in with this liturgy of information, especially when I was starting to feel really vulnerable. And I wasn't really, really clear on how I was supposed to be. So I would pull out my file cabinet of traditional parenting techniques, and I would pull out all those techniques, and I would try them, and they just always went south. Right? My daughter, I mean, she acted out. She didn't get the memo, as I like to say, that she was supposed to follow all of my guidance, right, from my mind. And it would just create more and more, trigger more and more vulnerability. And the more vulnerable I got, instead of staying with my heart and embracing my vulnerability with kindness and love, I kept going up to my head, and then I would get extremely rigid. And in my rigidity, I would project out onto my daughter that she was causing that pain and she was causing me to be rigid, and I needed to get her in line, right? I needed to, listen to those voices in my head. I could not afford to go into my heart because it was so incredibly vulnerable. So my rigidity would give me permission to act out with my daughter and try to, tell her what to do, when to do, how to do, where to do it. It was really, really intense. So when I began the work of dropping deeper and deeper into my heart for myself and through my safe seat, I began to open my heart to my daughter. And then I was able more and more to meet that resistance that was terrified to go into the vulnerability, but I could even bring that resistance into my heart and offer love. All right, lovies, have a great one. Thank you for listening to this episode of Parenting Paused. If you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor and share it with your mama friends. You can also leave a review wherever you listen, which will support getting the Pure Joy message out. Come on over to the Pure Joy Parenting Practice Facebook page or join me on Instagram to hear more. And don't forget to download your free copy of the Safe Seat course on the Pure Joy website. And while there, check out the offerings page to go deeper in the Pure Joy work.